Hey guys, and welcome back to the Nicola Collective Podcast with your host Emilio
and Olivia Nicola.
And we're going to talk about
mental health.
This is going to be a two-part episode, and what we're going to be looking into is the mental health side of spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
The last episode in spiritual warfare, we did unpack some things about how things are mental. Now, mental health in itself is spiritual. It's very spiritual. But there are physiological sides to things. Not everything has to do with demonic attacks.
And psychological.
Yeah, psychological attacks.
Yeah.
No, we're not by any means psychiatrists or psychologists or
mental
anything.
Health experts or anything like that.
No, but we are real people.
And we do experience mental health issues and stuff, so.
Yeah. The enemy likes to attack us, and you know what? It's just part of being a human now. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of things that we're starting to understand, a lot of things that we still don't understand about mental health because we're in it.
Well, and I think mental health over the past, couple of years has gotten worse. Increasingly worse for most people, just with everything that we're exposed to now.
Big key events, like the whole COVID outbreak or whatever, the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then there's also the LA fires. We're in LA, and so we had to experience that for a couple weeks, and we weren't close enough to the fires to be like, oh, our house is burned down, but we did experience the ash. We did experience not being able to go out in the same ways.
Sometimes mental health is it's dependent on your external factors, and then sometimes mental health is dependent on just literally there is no dependent. It's just you experience mental health issues, and that's what we're kind of going to be unpacking today is how you can navigate your mental health throughout your business journey and kind of just figure out how to have practical steps for this.
Yeah.
So,
because in reality, mental health isn't just for entrepreneurs, and it's not exclusive to just average everyday people either. It happens to everybody, and mental health is in everybody's life.
Yeah.
Whether it's good health or bad health, we know that it happens. So something that we want to be honest about is that there are a lot of things, a lot of weight to being an entrepreneur. Yeah. Especially if you're starting out, whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, whatever it is, it's a lot of weight to put on your shoulders. And that's one reason, where we have to give it to God, and he carries it. He, toes the yoke, or he toes the burden. Yeah. But let's kind of unpack that. There's the pressure of trying to do everything on time. There's the pressure of trying to make sure that clients are happy, making things that are good, your launch dates, all these different things. Oh, are my emails okay?
Being dissatisfied, whether or not you're gonna, get a new client or whatever. It's just it's just a lot to deal with.
Yeah, or partnerships, or disloyalty.
Yeah,
that kind of thing where you experience things where yeah,
and you're the one making the decisions most of the time. So it's you're the one that is gonna be most affected by it if you make the wrong decision. I mean, I don't know if that's exactly what all people go through, but that's just kind of what I feel a lot of the times we go through is are we making the right decisions? Are we working with the right people? Are we doing this right or that right or whatever? And it can be debilitating to think about and just figure out, and just don't want to overthink.
And when she says debilitating, we're not saying, oh, it just kind of hurts, or someone experiencing
no,
OCD.
It's crippling anxiety.
No, it's crippling anxiety. And people experience, some people just put they're organizational, and they have a little tendency, and they slap on the label of OCD, and it's dude, there's a lot more that goes on to it.
I think that's the most I don't know, it's ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous because it's when people say, oh, they have a little bit of a touch of OCD when it comes to they need to be organized and stuff, and that's just cute, but it's not like that whatsoever for people who actually have OCD. I don't even think that is OCD.
Well, there is organizational OCD, but when it comes to organizational OCD, it's typically to an extreme level. It's not something where it's I just need to put this little book and dust it off a little bit. It's this needs to be in the exact order at this exact time, and if I don't do it right, then something's gonna happen.
Yeah,
and that just goes on in the mind, and that's I would say that's a spiritual battle. And it's also, it's a physiological battle. Yeah. So things that can happen, there's, hormone levels that change, especially, and not to shoot on women, but women have a lot more changing hormones. Men have that 24-hour cycle. Women have the full 30 days, right? And so it's like the hormone levels, sorry, it seems weird that I'm the one saying it, but those hormone levels do affect us. And if we're not eating the right things, if we're not in the right environments, if we're not doing things right, those can affect all of it.
Yeah.
On top of the spiritual battles that we face. So imagine the enemy already knows the battle you're facing. He already knows that someone's experiencing anxiety. They're experiencing OCD. They're experiencing depression.
Yeah.
All from these external factors. And then all he has to do, honestly, he just blow him over. He just has to do one little extra thing. Yeah. And that sends him over the edge. I think
like what we're trying to say is that spiritual warfare is that spiritual warfare and mental health go hand in hand. Like they really, I think a lot of the times it's like you're being attacked, yes, by the enemy, but you're also like, you have some probably, psychological issues that need to be worked out. And I'm not saying like that's a bad thing. I think most people nowadays have some sort of mental health issue. Like whether or not it's like a seasonal issue, like sometimes people get seasonal depression or whatever, or like they get anxious when something goes wrong in their lives. And that's what we're saying. Those are the external factors of like, okay, it makes sense for someone to be anxious because of that. But then sometimes people are just anxious for no reason. Like they don't have an actual reason for being anxious. They're just anxious, and it can affect their business. It can affect what they do. They may not be able to do the same things that they were doing because it's like affecting their lives. So it's like, there's two differences between people who just go through it for a season, and there's external factors that determine whether or not they have those symptoms like anxiety, depression, OCD, stuff like that. And then there's people who are just like, okay, this is like they don't know why they experience this, and it affects a lot of their lives, especially in business.
Yeah.
And that is what I think kind of determining whether or not like you're somebody who has like your external factors cause this, or you're a person that literally has no idea why they just get anxious or experience something like that. And it's like it wreaks havoc on your business,
If you look at it, those moments, I picture it like World War II explosions, like watching that footage and everything, where it's like these planes are falling out the sky, there's explosions going everywhere, people are getting messed up, and this is the lightest way to say it, because it's gruesome the way that happened, but it's all out war, it's mental war, it's spiritual war. And one thing that we also wanted to address is that we know that people experience these things, and we're not going to avoid the fact that God can heal and restore people from this.
Yeah.
Now, it can also be an ongoing battle. It all depends on what goes on. Like, God can heal people, and God can heal.
Like, personally for us, like if we're just talking about us and our business and stuff and just how we are as people, like Emilio is someone who has like, it's very like seasonal, depends on his situation. He'll experience something depending on his situation, and I feel like that's more the average person has that, and that's normal. I feel like a lot of the times I get anxious for no reason. Sometimes I'll just be anxious and I don't know why, and it'll affect how we run things, how we act and work with each other, and how like just our lives go, like certain things we do in our lives go, and it sucks.
Yeah,
and it's like,
sometimes it's literally like little triggers that I don't even know about, but because it's going on in her mind, it's
just tough. And it's like, it's hard for us to work together in that capacity sometimes, because we're like, we have to figure out how to navigate that and take practical steps to like actually make sure I'm okay. And it sucks because it's like, I don't want to be going through this. I don't know why I go through this. And like we were talking about last week, it's like there is a spiritual battle going on that we don't even see, but there's also a psychological battle going on that sometimes, we have, family history of, maybe anxiety or depression, or someone's bipolar, or someone's like, has some sort of like OCD or whatever, or like ADHD, ADD, like all of that. It's like, and, because they're your family, they pass that, sort of, that's in
it
your.
It can be genetic.
Yeah, genetics, whatever.
It could be a generational curse.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's kind of like it's hard because then now we have to navigate that and be like, okay, what can we do to make sure that we're not letting that ruin our lives and rule our lives and our businesses? Because like I said, it can be debilitating. And I just want to address that. And you're getting this from two people who have completely different sorts of like mental health perspectives. Yeah. And it's really important that like you figure out, okay, is this just for seasons? Is this just, something that I go through and I don't know why I go through it, and kind of figure out how we can address, like, you can address that. And we're going to.
Yeah. And to insert some more biblical truth into it.
Yeah.
Is Ephesians 6:11 through 13. The mind is the first battlefield. Yeah. Right. Because the way I picture it is like your ears are closely connected to your brain, obviously your mind and everything. Yeah. And so if the enemy's whispering into your ear, it's going straight to that. You're like, oh, is this my thoughts? That kind of contemplation. Yeah. So that's where it can be looked at as the first battlefield.
And the enemy knows when people deal with mental health issues too.
Because it's like you think you can hide certain things. And there are moments, like if you are very close with God, sure, like there are moments where like the enemy's not going to touch you at certain points. Yeah. But there's other moments where like the enemy's been around longer than you have. He's seen you for longer than you could ever know. Yeah. And I'm not saying this to scare anybody, but he knows the tendencies of when someone, like he knows the telltale signs. It's like you might think that you're hiding it from other people, and sure, you could hide it from people, but the enemy knows exactly what you're doing. Yeah. Maybe not what you're thinking because he can't hear inside your head, but he knows what's going on. He knows the antics,
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the times when you experience certain things like this, you can think you're crazy. And you're like, am I crazy? Like, why is this intrusive thought popping up? Why am I, freaking out over the smallest thing? Or why, like, am I feeling so depressed right now? And it's like, it's all a battle in your mind. It's all the battle of like, okay, one, your mental health, you need to, check that. But then two, the enemy plays on that and goes, oh, I can see she's feeling anxious right now. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to send this, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this and see what that does to her or him or whatever. And it's like, and then it makes it worse. And I think, like we said, it just really goes hand in hand. It really goes hand in hand because you're like, it's almost like, especially as Christians and Christian entrepreneurs, like the enemy already knows like what makes you tick and also what makes you kind of like lose it. And he goes, okay, I see that you're dealing with this, so let me add this and then bring more of this. And then it's like, it just...
Yeah, because one big element of warfare and battle is to know what your enemy is doing, to know the style of your enemy. Yeah. And so he studies you. He studies the nature that you are in. He studies your environment. Yeah. Like if you look at it as like in those like war rooms and everything, he's got a whole plot. He's like, they do this when this goes on. They do this. This is the language that they use, everything like that. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is the fact that we need to stop giving in. And I'm not saying that it's easy. It's definitely easier said than done. Mm-hmm. But what we need to do is stop telling people about the problem. Yeah. And start telling the problem about how big God is. Because that changes everything. It's like another way to say it, stop telling God about your problems, but start telling your problems about God. Now, I'm not saying to actually stop telling God about your problems. You should lay it at his feet and give it to him. Yeah. But start telling the enemy, like, hey, like, my God can squash you like a bug. Like, I am not going to stand up for this, or I'm not going to let this happen. The other thing, too, is that we should just show up and show out, even when it's tough. Yeah. Faith is bigger than your feelings. Whether you're feeling anxiety, you're feeling depression, you're experiencing all these things. When you flip the script on those attacks, whether it's physiological or spiritual, there's a huge change. You're literally rewiring your brain and your spirit to literally focus on these things. Like, say someone who has a sailor's mouth, right? They're cussing like crazy. When they start practicing, okay, I'm going to dial it back. They're going to start training themselves not to cuss anymore. Or someone who is going through anger cycles, right? Anger issues. Yeah. You know, that training is, I have to tell myself that I'm not going to react like this because of the external outcome, right? And eventually becomes second nature. You're training yourself. And the best way to train yourself to speak against those attacks, whether physiological or spiritual, is to put it in action and be very deliberate about them. Yeah. And then it'll become habitual, right? Yeah. It'll become a habit. And it's not, just a religious habit. It's a good, healthy habit, right? Yeah. And I am by no means the perfect person to do this, to say this. Yeah. But I am putting things into practice. I am trying to do these things. So I would say, yes, honestly, whoever is actually putting into practice, whether they mess up or they're amazing at it, that's still the perfect example. Yeah. And maybe not perfect, but I'm saying like it's still a great example to see someone go through those things, to be able to bear witness to those things.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think like when we really have to look at like, okay, what the causes are too of these things, because I think a lot of the times it's not just like we don't just wake up one day and just experience anxiety or depression or, OCD or whatever, bipolar, whatever. I think it's really like accumulation of situations or trauma or family history, whatever, like just like, maybe just past experiences that just cause this over time. And it develops over time. It's like a habit that develops over time that's really hard to break. Yeah. And it's like, I think when you get down to the root of why you do something, why you feel a certain way, it really starts to change the way you can cope with it and like kind of like rebuke it or allow yourself to get over it, And it's like, that's the thing. It's like, it's really hard because it's hard to trace back to like why you do certain things or why you feel a certain way. But I think it's like, it's something where it's like looking into it, just
how we're just kind of born into sin. Like you can kind of see like we're kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but human nature is typically addicted. Like there's an addiction to feelings. There's an addiction to like whether it's good or bad. There's an addiction to certain feelings.
Sadness.
Yeah, to sadness. So it's like our carnal nature wants to latch on to things, whether we like think about it or not. Yeah. And so we have to be deliberate about those things. We have to be intentional about spending time in prayer. Practical steps. And speaking of practical steps, I wanted to talk about how we can change things. We can't just talk about just the facts, the facts of going through it. We need to start addressing how to get past it, how to go through it and not just like be in it. Yeah. So one thing that I would say, and I think we should definitely be better at, we should start developing the habit more, is starting off our day in prayer. Yeah. Whether alone or together,
it can be like so hard to just get up and be like, okay, I'm gonna pray, instead of just like running for your phone or reaching for your phone or thinking about everything else you have to get done. Like especially like when you're working for yourself, you have to like make sure that that's your priority, and it's so hard because you're like, that is what you think about straight away in the morning, and you kind of have to like die to yourself and be like, and die to your business almost, and just be like, okay, I gotta put God first because he's what's gonna make me succeed.
Your relationship with God is more important than your relationship through email campaigns and through social media. Like people don't need to know. What was that about? I'm connecting with what you're saying. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Not saying. Anyway, your relationship with God is more important than your relationship through email marketing and through social media. And why I say this is that we put so many things ahead, like you were just saying, we put so many things ahead, our business ahead of everything. And we had to die to ourselves and to our businesses, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Because if not, then our relationship with God can start to diminish. And that's where more and more holes are being punched in the wall, I guess you could say, where the enemy can, get a hold of things, it's like
if he can take over your like beginning part of your day, I feel like he can take over the rest of it. Like that'll dictate the rest of your day. Like, and that's so important to like make sure in the beginning, like when you wake up, you go, okay, I'm going to put my phone away. I'm just going to, because obviously your alarm goes off and you're like, oh gosh. And then you're like, I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. And then you're like, okay, let's just, whether or not you have a Bible right next to you, or you go on your app on your phone, and it's like you open your Bible app and it's like, okay, like let me meditate on this scripture, or let me apply this scripture right now and think about what I can, know what I mean? And it's like, that is like what you can do for, yourself, your business, everything. It'll dictate the rest of your day. And I feel like I'm so much more calm. I naturally wake up, and I lately have just been like, I don't know, like, and it's hard, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I gotta, how am I gonna get out of bed? How am I gonna do this? How am I gonna, like, and it's like the second I just like open like my Bible app, because that's what I typically do in the morning when it's dark. I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to open my Bible app and just like look at the scripture. I feel a lot better. And immediately I start my day off with something that is reflecting God's love and who God is. And then I'm like more peaceful. I'm not saying it completely changes everything, because it it's hard. You still have that anxiety regardless. Or the, whatever, you feel nervous and it's hard, but like I think it really helps it helps start you off the right way. And so you got to start off the right way for you to be able to like move forward and do everything else in excellence and properly, and actually have a good day.
Because the battle's not waiting for you to be ready. It's going to be there whether you want it or not. And so you have to be ready to fight, essentially. You have to be ready to fight from the get-go. And that's a huge part of the battle. Worship is a weapon. It's sharp. It can completely just obliterate the enemy.
I think someone said like before your feet hit the ground, like make sure you thank God for your day. Thank God that you woke up. List all the things you're grateful for. I think that also helps too, because when you put it into perspective of like, okay, I may be experiencing this, I may be going through this, but like this is a season, this is a time. Look at all the blessings I have in my life right now. Even though I go through this, or even though I'm experiencing this, it's like, this is what I have. This is what I'm blessed with. This is what God has given me. And like, it also helps you just navigate your day with gratefulness. And like, I think that's like a lot of the time, like people, people like when they start to take their eyes off of their problems, like because of like, they start to take their eyes off their problems because of like, they realize how much they have to be grateful for. So it helps them. Like a lot of like therapists, I feel like use that tactic of like, okay, tell me what you're grateful for. Tell me this, because it helps you really realize, oh, okay, like I do have a lot to be grateful for. Like, if I have all this stuff, if God's blessed me with all this stuff, like maybe he's going to bless me to get through this, and it's like,
another thing that we should be doing is also resting, because we're kind of guilty of trying to push through all the time. And I know a lot of other people are guilty of it too, because you want something so bad that you're willing to put everything in and try to run on empty. But the thing is, if you're running on no fuel, you're not getting anywhere. So rest is very important. Now, does that have to be a full Sabbath day? No, pray about it, like it could be. But
well, that is important.
It is
to
important.
Take one day, and that is biblical, to take one day out of the week to completely rest and not do anything. Now, I know there's people who can't just not answer their phones or whatever for work-related stuff, and we do that too, because obviously it's like there's always something, but it's like,
but we're not,
your day should be resting, and you should take one day out of the week. It doesn't have to be Sunday. It can be any day of the week, but just make sure you take one day for God, for yourself, to rest, you know,
because rest doesn't mean laziness. And it's hard to hear, because some people think that if I rest, then I'm just being lazy in it. But rest is intentional. Rest doesn't mean that you're not doing anything and being a potato.
God rested on the seventh day.
Yeah.
Like when he created heaven and earth.
Yeah.
He rested on the seventh day. And that's like, I think it just goes to show that, like, we need rest, like, in general, in order to do things. Like, we need that rest, or else we're going to burn out.
Yeah. Because literally from the beginning that there's rest.
Yeah.
And so there was a whole lot of things about that. But the Sabbath, I remember in the New Testament how people are like, or the Pharisees were antagonizing Jesus.
Yeah.
They're like, why are you working on the Sabbath day? You know, it's like, so am I supposed to let this guy go through the struggle? Is it not better that I heal him? You know?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, even though, like, see, that goes to show you, it's like
there's certain things
there
where
are certain things
prioritized.
like where it's like, okay, like, I know you can't completely just shut off your phone if someone texts you, a client texts you, customer wants to get a hold of you, if someone, like, you can't just shut off your phone completely if you don't want to do that. But it's like, you gotta, like, realize that it's like, you gotta take that day, the majority of your day should be like resting.
Yeah.
And like we said, I'm like, Jesus also had like moments of, like, he was on a Sabbath day, which was Saturday, was their day of rest, and he literally stopped to go heal somebody, just because it doesn't matter whether or not it's a Sabbath day or like, and I know it's a little bit out of context, because obviously we don't follow that whole, like, Sabbath day is like Saturday,
and we don't follow it in the sense of, like,
but it's like, it goes to show that, like, even on the rest days, it's like, if there's a priority that's like, you know, you just do it, you know. I don't think it's, we're kind of over explaining it, but you know what I mean.
And on top of rest is community. We were made for community from the beginning. When God created Adam, he noticed that he was alone, he was lonely, and so he needed his partner, right? So God created Eve out of Adam's rib, and everyone pretty much knows that story. Like, even atheists know the story of Adam and Eve. And
pretty much
when it comes down to it, you could really see that we do need community. You could say, oh, you know what, I don't need anybody, but notice the feeling of isolation, notice the depression that kicks in, notice the anxiety that kicks in isolation. So if you're going to be alone, it's solitude. You're not truly alone, you're spending it with the Lord, right? But we need community with other people. We need to talk with people. Who knows what you're really going through if you're not explaining it? You can't expect people to, you know, understand exactly what you're going through if you're not talking about it. And, you know, obviously you're not going to share it with the wrong person. You have to be very intentional
of that too.
Exactly.
Because, like, a lot of the times I get nervous to share things with people, because I'm like, dude, they could use it against me, or they could think I'm crazy, or think I'm, like, you know, a certain way. And it's like, I've made the mistake multiple times of telling the wrong person something that they probably shouldn't have heard from me. And it's like,
because then they take it,
and they use it, and it's like, it sucks. So it's like, that's why I'm like, okay, I gotta really weigh out the situation and be like, okay, are they trustworthy? Do I see myself having, like, a future with them as, like, a friendship or whatever? And, like, you know, and it's like, and then that's also, like, sometimes God opens the door to, like, that conversation. Like, they'll ask you a question and it just comes out. Yeah. And I think that's godly, because it's like, God's like godly because God's opening the door for you, you know? And it's like, you're able to, like, you feel comfortable. You feel like, okay, I can trust this person, and they help you. They give you biblical advice, you know? And that's the thing. It's like, that's so important too, because, like, the wrong person will give you the wrong advice.
Yeah.
And like you'll end up most likely, if you are not in the right headspace, which if you're dealing with mental health, most likely you're not going to always be in the right headspace.
And that emphasizes the point that bad company corrupts good character.
Yeah. So it's like then you're going to most likely internalize that. And that's not good because, see, another point too is like, we talked about this too last week, but it's like, right?
Yeah.
The power of life and death is in in your tongue. So it's like even people, what they speak over you is so important because it's like if someone's telling you something and it's bad advice and bad, it's not good, like whatever, you're going to feel, you're going to probably internalize that. And
it also comes down to like taking in what people say, like insults, whether you choose to believe them or not. Even if it's in the back of the mind, or even being the one to dish out the insults too.
Yeah.
And that can harm someone else, and that's a different responsibility.
Yeah. That's why I'm so careful now with like what I would say. Like there's certain things where I'm like, I don't care. I'm just going to say it. Like, it's different. But like the deep stuff that I, deal with that I only like really talk to God and Emilio about is like, that's where I'm like, okay, I gotta be really careful because I don't trust many people anymore. And it's like that's hard. I feel like a lot of people go through that too, where it's like they don't trust people, especially Christians, because it can be like hard. Like I feel like almost everybody that's listening to this has been burned by a Christian at least once in their life. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's the thing. It's like, I don't want to sit here and be like, oh yeah, the Christians can do no wrong or can do no harm or whatever, because a lot of the times we're most hurt by people in the church.
Because like, the reason why is the same reason why, like in a husband and wife or any kind of relationship.
Because you expect better.
Exactly.
You know that they know what you know. So it's like you think, okay, like they're going to be better, but they end up not being, and that's no shade to them, because
if that same person was, let's use like the Christianese, if that person was of the world,
you wouldn't expect any better.
No, because you're like, that's what they do. It's like when it came to people like protesting a certain thing, it's like, I don't like it at all. Yeah. But what am I supposed to do? That's the kind of person that they are. That's the life that they live. I expect it.
I have less expectations for people that I know that are not Christian, just because, and I'm easily able to like not internalize things or take things to heart, because I'm like, you know what? They don't know any better. Forgive them. They don't know any better. And I still love them anyways. And it's not to say I don't love Christians anyways when they mess up, but it's really hard to get past that because you just expect better from them, and when they don't deliver, it's hard. And it's like I have grace for them, and obviously for myself, because I fall short too of that, but it's like it's really hard because I am one of those people that are like kind of like ride or die when I meet a good person who's like Christian and a friend, like I could see myself being friends with. I'm like, anything, like, like you need me at this time,
I'll give you my right arm.
And it's like, like let's talk about it, let's become best friends. And it's like, that is who I am, that's who Emilio is too. And it's like we've been burned a lot.
And something to relate to your point is even the Bible talks about how it's like it's better for you to have sinned and not have known, to have not have heard of Christ, but to, now that you hear the word and you know the scripture, you know what you're supposed to do, and then you sin, that's terrible. Because it's like, paraphrasing, it's like, dude, you already know better and you're still doing it. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's the, like, going back to the point where it's like you have that expectation for other Christians. It's like, not only for sin, but for sin with one another is where it comes down to it. It really is awful seeing that happen, and that really affects mental health, because you're like, I trusted you. How could you do this to me? Like, why would you do this to me? You're a Christian and you're still acting like you're in the world. You're professing this, but you're acting like this, and it's ridiculous. And so even the Bible talks about how you can't be doing that. And like, all right, guys, well, we're gonna end this episode here, and we're actually gonna go in for a part 2 to continue on with what we were talking about. And we'll see you in the next one. We got some more for you.